How's it going, boys? Hat-Trick Line finally back with another video. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing the best contract on all 31 NHL teams. But before we get into this one real quick, I do want to apologize for the lack of video content since the off-season has started. I may have uploaded maybe 2 videos, I think, since July 1st. So I do apologize, but we are going to start amping and, putting out more video content before the season starts. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that. The second little tidbit is I do want to thank O. Nyquist for the video idea. A couple days ago, he did the worst contract on every NHL team. I gave him a shout, asked him if I could do the best contract. He said go ahead, so I thank you for his blessing. And I'm going to link his video in the description below if you guys want to check out the worst contract on every team after you're done with this one. And the third little bit before we get started is I just want to let you know that I am not counting rookie contracts for this video. I think it would be a bit unfair for some of the other guys if I did rookie contracts, because I'm sure 80% of these would be rookie contracts if I did it. So we are excluding that. We are only including people who have signed after their entry-level deal and that are making $1 million or more. And with that said, let's get into the first best contract, and we're starting with the Anaheim Ducks. So for the best contract on the Anaheim Ducks, we have Rickard Rakell. He's a great young scorer. Had a down year this year, only 43 points in 69 games. But I think Rakell is a 30-goal, 30-assist guy. I think he can be a consistent 60, even maybe 70-point guy. I think he's going to be their number one center when Getzlaf is gone, and Henrique is, who knows how long he has with the Ducks. But I went with Rakell. Very good player on a very good deal. 3 more years at a shade under $4 million. A great contract for the Ducks. Next up on the list for the Arizona Coyotes, I have Annti Raanta, who just like Rakell kind of had an off year, didn't get to play a lot of games, missed a lot of time with injury. As you can see, only played 12 games. Went 5-6 with a .906 save percentage. He is locked up with Arizona for 2 more seasons at 4.25. For a starting goalie, I think this is pretty good, and I think Arizona is a dark horse to make the playoffs next year. I just really like their team. I always have for the last couple of years. Keller, I think Jake Chichurin is great. They have a really good squad, and I think Annti Raanta is definitely a guy who can win them a lot of games. And, I think they're a dark horse, and I really like Annti Raanta as a goalie, so a great contract for their starter. So the next one up on the list may be a controversial one for some people, but I have Brad Marchand as the best contract for the Bruins. Last year he put up a nice slick 100 points in 79 games played, 36 goals and 64 assists, and he's currently locked up for 6 more seasons at a shade over $6 million. A lot of people may look and point to David Pastrnak as the obvious choice here, but if you look at the numbers, it's pretty obvious for me that Marchand is the better one. Marchand put up like 20 more points. Pastrnak had like 80. He did miss some time, but it's the contract when you look at it. Pastrnak is at 6.6, which is $500,000 less than Marchand, and Marchand's also locked up for 2 more seasons than Pastrnak. So Marchand is on a longer deal at less money and can also produce better or as good as David Pastrnak. So Brad Marchand is the pick for the Bruins. Next up on the list, we have Buffalo, and this was kind of a tough one because, not a whole lot of guys stuck out for me. I didn't want to do guys with 1 years. There are a couple of them on here. I made a couple exceptions, but Sam Reinhart is who I picked for the Sabres. Last year had a great year, 65 points, almost a 70-point season. I think he can be a 25, 45 assist guy in his career for 70 points. I think he can do that. He's going to get a nice raise next season, but Sam Reinhart, great player on a good deal for 1 more season for the Sabres. For the Calgary Flames, I decided to go with Elias Lindholm. Right now, he is signed 5 more years at a shade under $5 million at $4.85 million per season. And last year, he had 78 points in 81 games on the first line with Gaudreau and Monahan. What a great trade this ended up being for Calgary, getting Noah Hanifin and Lindholm. Lindholm really, broke through his shell and had such a great season on their first line this year. Really showed what kind of player he could be. I've always liked Elias Lindholm. I thought he was a great pick by Carolina when they drafted him. He never really got to reach his offensive potential. I kind of got worried there, but what a great trade that ended up being, stellar, great player, and for Calgary, offensively dominant this year on their first line. For the Carolina Hurricanes, we have Teuvo Teravainen. Very similar to Lindholm, when he got to his new team, when he left Chicago and got to Carolina, who really realized his offensive potential. Last year he blew up for 76 points in 82 games, and currently he is locked up for $5.4 million for 5 more seasons. Teravainen's a guy I really like. He's got the offensive skill. I wanted to maybe go with a defenseman with this one. I was looking at Slavin and Pesce as 2 options, but I went with Teuvo Teravainen. A great player, and Carolina is lucky to have him on a good contract. Up next, we have the Chicago Blackhawks. This was another very tough one. I decided to go with Erik Gustafsson. 1 year, $1.2 million this upcoming season. Last year, obviously, we all know he blew up for 60 points on the blue line. Their best defenseman offensively by far last year. He's one of those guys that could definitely fall off next year. Not sure he's going to be able to put up 60 points again. I could see him doing 40, maybe 30, but I don't think 60 points is in it for Erik Gustafsson again. But they got him on another year on a great contract, and maybe if he does have a good season, he is going to get paid next offseason. But definitely a great contract for this next season. Next up, we have another legitimate superstar, a top 5 player in this league. We have Nathan MacKinnon, who is currently locked up for 4 more seasons at $6.3 million a season. Last year, he put up 99 points in 82 games, just 1 point shy of 100. But, you look at those numbers, it's unbelievable. 41 goals and almost 60 assists. This guy is dominant. He signed his deal right before he started his spree last year, and this year he really showed what an offensively dominant player he can be, playing alongside Rantanen and Landeskog. It really just goes to show that you got to get your guys locked up long term, because Nathan MacKinnon's contract is, really producing value now that we see what a star he is. Next up on the list, we have Columbus, and I went with Seth Jones. I was looking at Jones and Atkinson, both, very good players considered for this spot. I think Atkinson is making 5.9, so like 500,000 more than Seth Jones, and I think he's also locked up longer. But I look at Seth Jones, I think he is a Vezina caliber defenseman. He had a bit of an off year this year, but still 46 points in 75 games. I think Seth Jones is going to be a dominant defenseman for years to come. I think he is a guy we could look at as a Norris defenseman for years to come. And at 3 more years at $5.4 million, not a bad deal for a superstar defenseman. Next up on the list, we have our second of 2 defensemen in a row. It is John Klingberg with the Dallas Stars. Same thing as Jones, 3-year deal, but at $4.25 million, this deal is an absolute steal. Klingberg is known as one of the more premier offensive defensemen in the NHL nowadays. Last year had a bit of an off season, missed a lot of time due to injury, only put up 45 points, but it was only in 64 games, so you play a full season, he might have 55, maybe even 60 points. Still a great year for Klingberg, and what a steal of a contract he is on for the Stars. Next up on the list, we have Andreas Athanasiou for the Detroit Red Wings. This was another kind of tough one. It was tough to debate between him and Anthony Mantha. I decided to go with Athanasiou. He's making just a little bit less money on a 1-year deal, $3 million, and had a 30-goal season on a not-too-great Detroit Red Wings team. So a really good job for Athanasiou there. I think he's going to get paid next summer, but not a bad season and definitely not a bad contract for 1 more year. Coming up with one of the, less stellar contracts is the Edmonton Oilers, and I went with Alex Chiasson. Last year, 22 goals was not too bad. He's locked up for 2 more years on a $2.15 million deal. Like I said, 22 goals, 38 points is a pretty good season. The Oilers do not have a lot when it comes to great contracts or contracts that stick out to me, so I went with Chiasson for the 22 goals. I actually considered Connor McDavid to be up there, just for the fact that, they even got him on a contract and got him to stick around. So, not bad job there, but I went with Chiasson for the more realistic pick. Next up, we have the Florida Panthers, and this one was an obvious one for me. It's Alex Barkov. I actually could have gone with Evgeny Dadonov, and maybe even Jonathan Huberdeau for this one, but I went with Barkov. You look at his numbers, one of the most underrated players in the game. This guy is an all-star. I think he's a top 10, maybe even top 5 centerman in this league. One of the best defensive centermen. I think he's the next coming of Patrice Bergeron, maybe even a little more offensively gifted than Bergeron. Look at those numbers, 96 points. The guy is a star, and he's locked up at just under $6 million for the next 4 seasons. What a contract for the Panthers, and what a player Alex Barkov is. Next up on the list is a kind of rough one. I don't want to say it's a bad contract because obviously this is supposed to be the best contract, but the Kings didn't have a whole lot of options, so I went with Jonathan Quick. He's locked up for 4 more seasons on $5.8 million. 46 games played last year. He went 16, 23, and 7. Obviously, the Kings were a despicable team last year. They just played real bad. But Jonathan Quick is a former Vezina winner. We all know Jonathan Quick is a great goalie. Might be coming to an end in terms of his dominant play, but still an all-star for LA. They're one of their better players behind Doughty and Kopitar. And for their goalie to be signed for 4 more years at 5.8 is not too bad, but the Kings didn't give me a whole lot of choice with this one. Next up on the list, we have Eric Staal. He's signed for 2 more seasons at $3.25 million a season. Last year put up 52 points with 20 goals in 81 games. Eric Staal, it was really a steal when they signed him in free agency a couple years ago. He just finished his 3-year deal, and what a great signing that was. It was kind of a, do or die contract for Eric Staal, his last kind of run, and he took that contract and ran with it. I believe it was 3 years at the time at just maybe $3.5 million, and what a player he was for the Wild. This February, he signed a 2-year extension at just under that at $3.25 million, and I still think he can be a 50-point guy for the duration of that contract, 50, maybe 40 in year 2, but I still think he can score 50 next year. Eric Staal, a great player on a good deal. Next up on the list is the Montreal Canadiens, and this was another tough one. I was debating between Domi and Gallagher, but I ended up going with Max Domi. The point totals is what threw me off there. Gallagher is locked up for a little longer, but 72 points in his first year in a Canadian sweater is hard to argue against. It is only a 1-year deal, 1 year left at $3.15 million, but for this next season, he is on a great contract. Max Domi, what a great player, 72 points in 82 games, as I mentioned, and for 1 more year at least, he is on a great deal. Next up was one of the toughest decisions I had to make. It was back and forth between Viktor Arvidsson and Mattias Ekholm for Nashville. I ended up going with Arvidsson. He's got 5 more years left at $4.25 million. Last year, only played 58 games, missed a lot of time with injury, but 34 goals in 58 games is absolutely astonishing. Only put up 14 assists, but when you're scoring like that, no one cares what your assist totals are like. Could have been almost a 50-goal scorer if he had played the whole season, which is absolutely bananas. Mattias Ekholm, obviously another great choice. I think, one of the best defensive defensemen in the game today and can put up points. I think his play in the last 2 years has come a long way. I do think he is one of the better defensemen in this league, and he is very highly underrated. I went with Arvidsson, though, and, you could put either guy here, but I chose Arvidsson for this one. Next up, for the New Jersey Devils, I have Kyle Palmieri. He's locked up for 2 more years at $4.65 million a season. Last year, pretty much a 30-goal season if he'd played the full season, 60 points. Not a bad player at all. An all-star last year, Kyle Palmieri. He could have gone with Taylor Hall for this one too. He's not making too much considering how great of a player he is, but Palmieri at 2 more seasons. Hall, we're not even sure if Hall's going to sign with New Jersey or if he's going to go to free agency next year. He would make bank, obviously, on the open market, but Kyle Palmieri for 2 more seasons at least is on a great contract for the Devils. Next up, we have the Islanders, and this was another tough one. I debated between Pulock and Bailey. I ended up going with Pulock. Another 1-year guy at $2 million. Ryan Pulock, had a very slow start, which is, I think, what makes him the obvious choice for me. I had him in fantasy hockey, and I ended up dropping him, and as soon as I dropped him, someone else picked it up, and it's really when he started to turn it on. Finished with 37 points in 82 games played. Obviously, a real good offensive defenseman for the Islanders. Picked his play up very late in the season, and I think is a guy who can get paid and who might even just put up a 50-point season next year. I think he could do it, but Ryan Pulock, at least for 1 more year, on a great deal for the Islanders. Next up on the list was another kind of obvious one for me. It is Mika Zibanejad. He's got 3 more years left at $5.35 million per season and put up 30 goals and 74 points in 82 games last year. He is their first-line center right now. He's going to probably center Capo Caco, and with the additions of Panarin and Trouba, Just a great, forward core Zibanejad now has to work with. Considering he put up 74 points with, without those guys, it's going to be pretty incredible if he's playing with one of them this year. I think he's going to maybe put up 80 points, depends on how good the Rangers are. But Zibanejad, for at least 3 more years, is on a great contract. Next up on the list, we have the Ottawa Senators, and this was another very tough one because not only are there not a whole lot of options because they don't have too many players even signed, but most of the guys they have signed are on 1-year deals, and a lot of them are on rookie deals as well, so it left me with not a lot of options. I ended up going with Chris Tierney though. Not a bad deal at all, 48 points last year, almost 10 goals in 81 games, so pretty much a 50-point season you want to call it. He's locked up for 1 more year at just under $3 million a season, so a tough one for Ottawa, but Chris Tierney is not at all on a bad contract and is a pretty good player for the Sens. Next up on the list, we have Sean Coturier for the Flyers. He's locked up at just over $4 million for 3 more years, and last year put up 76 points in 80 games. It was his second back-to-back 76-point season. Sean Couturier is an absolute star. He really started to, increase his point production when they moved Giroux off center to the wing and put Couturier in the middle with him. It really, it made the difference in Couturier, one of the premier centermen we now have in the NHL. Back-to-back 76-point seasons. He's a 30-40 assist guy for 70 points. 30 goals, 40 assists, that is. But Sean Couturier, what a great player for the Flyers. Coming up next on the list, and this one may surprise you, but I have picked Sidney Crosby for the Pittsburgh Penguins. My reasoning is that Sidney Crosby is without a doubt, if not the best, then at least the second best NHL player. And when you look at that contract, 8.7 for 6 more years, they are not going to have to worry about signing him for a long time. And when you're a top 2 player in the NHL to be making, less than maybe 15 guys, that's a pretty good contract in my books. Obviously, Sid put up 100 points last year, one of his best offensive seasons in recent memory. And like I said, $8.7 million when guys are making now 12, 11, $10 million. It is an absolute steal of a contract for the Penguins, so I went with Sid for Pittsburgh. Next up on the list, this is probably the most recently signed one. It is fresh in a lot of people's memory, and it is Kevin Lebanc for the Sharks at 1 year, $1 million. A measly $1 million for Lebanc here, who had 56 points in a full 82 games. This guy, what a steal of a draft pick by the Sharks. It's funny looking at the comparisons between him and Hayes, where Hayes had 1 less point than Lebanc all season, 55 versus 56, and Hayes got 7 times 7, and Lebanc got 1 times 1. Obviously, Lebanc doing the right thing, doing the team-friendly contract to help people get under deals for the Sharks, and it's just a great class act by him. We don't see this in a lot of cases anymore, but definitely a great play by Lebanc. He's obviously going to get paid next year. I have no doubt about that, but not a bad move for Lebanc, signing a team-friendly deal. Next up on the list, I have Jordan Binnington. And this is an interesting one in my mind because, this is a really boom or bust contract. We're going to find out this upcoming season if it is a good or bad deal because, we're going to find out if Binnington is really all he is believed to be. Last year in 32 games, he went 24-5-1 with a .927 save percentage. Obviously, helped bring the Blues from the basement to champions within a 6-month period. What a great rookie season for Binnington. Helped them go to the playoffs and win the Cup in his first year. Won all 16 playoff games for them. And signed a pretty nice $4.4 million deal for 2 more seasons. So like I said, we're going to really find out if Binnington is another Andrew Hammond or if he is the next coming of Matt Murray. We are going to find out very quickly. Next up on the list, we have Andrei Vasilevskiy for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Only 1 year for Vasilevskiy, and it is $3.5 million. But look at those numbers. He is a Vezina goalie. He is the future in net for Tampa. He is the now and the future, I should say. Missed some time due to injury last year, but 39-10-4 record with a .925 save percentage is hard to argue. Like I mentioned, only 1 year, $3.5 million. He is going to be a paid goaltender. I wouldn't be surprised to see him, become the richest goaltender in the league. highest paid anyway. But Andrei Vasilevskiy, great player, and at least for one more season, is on a very team-friendly contract for the Bolts. Next up on the list, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs, and this was kind of another easy one for me. I went with Morgan Rielly. 3 years left on a $5 million deal for a guy who put up 72 points last year is an absolutely incredible deal. He also played all 82 games. Last year and the year before, we've really seen an increase in Morgan Rielly's play. I think he went from like 40 to 50 to 70 in terms of point totals. An absolute stud on the blue line, the #1 blue liner for the Leafs, and on a very good contract for the next 3 seasons at least. If they are able to get Marner back and have all of Nylander, Marner, Matthews, and Tavares, it is most likely because of the absolute steal of a contract that Morgan Rielly is on. For Vancouver, I decided to choose Bo Horvat. This was another tough one. I don't think a whole lot of them stuck out to me, but Bo Horvat is definitely a great contract for the Canucks. $5.5 million for the next 4 seasons for a guy who pretty much put up 30 goals and 60 points this season. Played in all 82. You know, he's a great defensive player. I think that trade for Schneider is definitely looking good for the Canucks right about now. And definitely, you know, a great player on a good deal for the Canucks. Next on the list, we have the Vegas Golden Knights, and I went with Johnathan Marchessault. He is locked up for 5 more seasons at $5 million per. Didn't have as good as a season as he did in year 1 for the Golden Knights, but 59 points last year in 82 games is nothing to scoff at. Obviously, like I said, 5 years, $5 million, a very team-friendly deal for one of their first-line players. An absolute star for the Golden Knights. You know, Florida definitely messed up when they gave Marchessault up for free and added Riley Smith as a kind of thank you for taking him. Not really a thank you, but you know, it was a, if you take Riley Smith, you get Marchessault, and what a burn that was to the Florida Panthers. Both of them have been great for the Golden Knights, but Marchessault on a very good deal. Next up on the list, we have Nick Backstrom for the Capitals. I was originally going to choose Kuznetsov, but when I look at his contract, I don't feel like it's their best one. I feel like it's good, but I don't feel like it's great. So I went with Nick Backstrom. 1 year left, obviously only at $6.7 million, but one of the most, you know, the greatest playmakers of our generation, a premier passer. You know, one of the reasons Ovi gets so many goals as he does, obviously Ovechkin is a great goal scorer, but Backstrom is the reason that Ovechkin, you know, gets so many. You know, I think he really elevates Ovi. They complement each other, and Backstrom is definitely not a slouch. He gets, you know, 20 goals a season as well. So definitely elevated by his play, but Nick Backstrom for at least 1 more year is on a very good deal for the Capitals. And finally, last but not least, we have my team, the Winnipeg Jets, and I decided to go with Mark Scheifele. I remember him and MacKinnon signed on the same day because, you know, I'm a big fan of MacKinnon, so I follow the Colorado Avalanche and the Winnipeg Jets very frequently. But they signed on the same day for about the same dollar amount. Scheifele signed at a little bit less and 1 more season. And what a contract this has turned out to be. Scheifele is an absolute beast, a first-line superstar for the Jets. Last year scored almost 40 goals and put up 84 points. You know, I can't say enough about this contract. Kevin Cheveldayoff did a very good job signing Scheifele to this deal. He is locked up long-term, and if we do, which I do believe we will, get back Patrik Laine and Kyle Connor, it is definitely because Mark Scheifele is on such a great contract. And that is the video for today, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed. As I previously mentioned, I do apologize for the lack of content, but I will be amping it up and getting out some more content towards the start of the season. With all videos, if you have any suggestions for any videos, leave them down in the comments, and if you have any, you know, opinions or disagreements about the players I chose, let me know. I'm always interested in hearing your guys' opinions. I do genuinely form opinions based on what you guys tell me. If I'm misinformed on a subject, then, you know, and you guys let me know, then that is something I do take into account in future videos. So definitely let me know. And anyways, peace out, boys. Have a good one, and I will see you in the next one.